मधुपातारितायते मधुक्षरन्ति सिन्धवः मद्वेएन सन्तोषधेः मधुनक्तं मुतोषसे मधुमत् पार्थिवगुम्रजहं मधुदावरस्तु न पिता मधुमान्नो वनस्पतिर्मधुमागुमस्तु सूर्यं मद्विर्गावो भवन्तु न। ओम शांति शांति शांति। May the winds blow sweetly, may the rivers flow sweetly, may days and nights be sweet to us, may the dust of the earth be sweet to us, may the trees and plants be sweet to us, may the sun shine on us sweetly, may the cows yield us sweet milk, may all beings be happy, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be blissful. Om, peace, peace, peace be imposed. Friends, we are very happy that we have two guest speakers this morning. We invited our two nuns, Prabhajika Virajaprana from San Francisco Convent and Prabhajika Vrajaprana from Santa Barbara Convent. They spoke yesterday, and this morning they are also going to speak. Virajaprana's topic will be 3 spiritual practices for busy people. Very pertinent and very practical subject. And Vrajaprana's title will be The United States of Vivekananda. Very interesting subject. I know both nuns from the beginning of their joining. I think I met Virajaprana in 1972 in San Francisco. It was the opening of the women's retreat in Olima. So I knew her over 50 years. Vrajaprana, I knew her a little teenage girl. I knew her parents also very well. Bubbling up, full of energy. They are my very dear sisters. So when I invited them, they could not say no. Of course, we shall come and visit. I am very grateful to them that they came, and they spoke yesterday, and they are going to speak today. Both nuns will speak half an hour, and then there will be question and answer. I do not know if we have sufficient room in the library. I was thinking that they can sit here and can answer. In the chapel here, you can ask them questions. And they conduct a very interesting program. I think from Santa Barbara or the all nuns from Hollywood. You see, we have 4 convents, I call it. Hollywood, Santa Barbara, San Francisco, and San Rafael. These are the 4 places our nuns live. Those who join women, those who join the Ramakrishna order, they join in these 4 places anyhow. So they will answer questions. We shall arrange in the chapel, because in the library we cannot accommodate too many people. So I invite Virajaprana to speak on her topic, 3 spiritual practices for busy people. Then Vrajaprana will speak afterwards. Thank you.
Good morning. Very happy to see all of you this morning. Thank you, Swamiji, for inviting us and giving us this opportunity to visit St. Louis and take part in the programs. So as Swamiji said, my topic is 3 spiritual practices for busy people. You know, in practical Vedanta, Swami Vivekananda says that the ideas in Vedanta philosophy, they have to be integrated into our everyday lives. If we don't relate them to our lives, they remain just as mere intellectual concepts. They have to be made practical. You know, Swamiji often emphasizes the oneness of existence, and that existence penetrates every aspect of our lives. All the more reason that we need to bring all of these ideas into our lives every day, not just on Sundays or on some weeknights, but every day in order for them to be effective. As we know, Swamiji emphasized that Vedanta was not just for those who have retired from the world or for monks or nuns. Vedanta is for everyone. In fact, some of the most exalted thoughts of Vedanta have come from those who have lived the busiest of lives. Swamiji says from kings, from emperors. And we know in the Upanishads that some of the most exalted thoughts have come from those who were extremely busy in everyday affairs. Therefore, it should be even more of a possibility for us to make these ideas practical in our lives. As Swamiji says, our lives, he claims, compared to those, are very leisurely lives, relatively free. Now, we can argue with Swamiji on that point, but that's another matter. He says our wants are as nothing as those compared with Arjuna, who was on the battlefield in the chaos of battle and who found the time to discuss the highest thoughts with Sri Krishna. So he said we ought to be able to, in our lives, find the time to put these into practice. Now, most of us have more time than we think we have, if we care to put it to good use for a higher purpose. With the amount of freedom we have, Swamiji says, we can attain to 200 ideals in this life if we want. And I think that's a very important word, if we want. Once Swami Brahmananda asked a monk how his spiritual practices were going. And the monk said, I don't have any time to do it. I have too much work to do. And Swami Brahmananda told him it's a mistake to think that sadhana cannot be practiced because of want of time. He said it's not the lack of time, it's the restlessness of the mind. So our minds are always running. They're in a state of intense vibration. In fact, that's the definition given of the mind by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras. The mind is a state of vibration. So even while we sleep, we dream, and in deep sleep, our minds operate on another level. So it follows then that this idea of busyness is a state of mind. It's a feeling that we have a great many things to do, or that we have to focus all of our attention on a particular activity. So our spiritual masters remind us that it's not the lack of time, it's the restlessness, the lack of control of the mind that is the problem. And again, Swami Brahmananda reminds us that we only need a very, very small percentage of our minds to do anything in this life. And that with consistent practice, we can withdraw the rest of our minds within and still achieve everything we have to do on the outside. So feeling busy is a mental state. Now, that's not to say that we are genuinely not busy. in our current distracted state of awareness, we are busy. So one of the main things that we need to focus on in our spiritual life is trying to gain control over our minds and our prana, our energy, both of which we waste an incredible amount of. It is really essential that we focus our attention on all that we do, not just at the time of our formal practices. I mean, after all, we only have one mind. It's that same mind. For 23 hours of the day, we do this, that, and the next thing, and then on the 24th hour, we expect to be able to sit down and meditate or do our practices. That's not possible. We have to give our full mind, all the time. As Swamiji has so often said, there is no difference, really, between our spiritual practices and our everyday life. We have to integrate them. It is we who make the difference. If we are disciplined and regulated in our work and our personal lives, our practices will become easier and more effective. And furthermore, as one of our late Swamis remarked, interest plays an extremely vital role in our spiritual life. You know, if our interest is all tied up in the external world, we have very little to put within. Everything then flows out of us. Our thoughts, our will, our physical, our mental energies. Then we end up living more outside of ourselves as opposed to within. So I think we need to ask ourselves at the very outset, are we really interested in our spiritual practice? Or is it just a matter of mechanical, or is it just a routine? Because if we're really interested, there's nothing that can hold us back. We will find some time to do our daily practices, even if it's for a short period of time. We never say, oh, I'm too busy, I can't eat. Or I'm too busy, I can't sleep. Or I'm too busy, I can't see my emails or listen to my voice messages. We have time for all sorts of things. But when it comes to spiritual practices, I'm too busy. So we have to look at our intent, and we have to look at our interest. Without our daily practice, it's very difficult to become rooted in spiritual life. I mean, let's face it, we have to work hard to achieve anything in life, isn't it? If you want to become a doctor, you want to become a lawyer, you want to become a research scientist, whatever it is, we have to spend hours and hours of concentrated effort and work. Is spiritual life any different? How is it different? We have to put that same intensity, that same interest into our spiritual practices. And you know, Sri Ramakrishna used to say that a spiritual seeker only needs two things. He needs sincerity and he needs yearning. He said people shed a bucket full of tears for their wife, for their husband, for their family, for their jobs. But who cries for God? Where's the interest? So given these guidelines for time management in our busy schedule, here are 3 practices that I feel a person, no matter how busy he or she might be, can do. You know, numbers always draw our attention. I love numbers. The whole universe is based on numbers. And if you look in our spiritual literature, you will find numbers everywhere. For example, in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, he says there are 8 fetters. And sometimes you think there are only 8. It seems like there's a lot more than that. But Sri Ramakrishna realized that everything that we would consider a fetter, he boiled it down into 8. Everything falls within those 8 categories: shame, hatred, fear, secretiveness, the desire to control, etc. And then Lord Buddha gave us the 8-fold path: right action, right understanding, right thought, right speech. And he gave us the 4 noble truths about suffering and how to overcome it. And then there's 5 steps to enlightenment. What are those 5 steps? Purity, love, service, and so on. We have the 24 cosmic principles. I mean, it goes on and on. So whenever we are trying to conceive of something vast, something infinite, I feel that numbers help bring it within our reach. It's something that we can wrap our minds around, something we can grasp. Otherwise, like Trishanku, we're hanging somewhere in space. We need something tangible that we can hold on to strive to achieve. So this morning, we're going to consider 3 practices for busy people. The first practice is inspirational or devotional or holy reading. And the second is reflection. And the third is karma yoga. You know, I like to conceive of these 3 practices like a triangle. And the base of the triangle is inspirational or devotional reading, which appeals to our emotions. And the left side of the triangle is reflection, which appeals to our mind, involves our mental apparatus. The right side of the triangle involves our will, action, karma yoga. And all of the lines meet at the apex, which is the divine within ourselves. If we practice like this, it will take us to the divine within. You know, when we read something which we consider inspirational, it touches our heart. That's the point. And whatever touches our heart, our mind turns in that direction. It's soothing. It's reassuring. It's uplifting. So, for example, there are books such as the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. There's Sri Sarada Devi and her divine play. There are many, many books. Eternal Companion, the teachings of Swami Brahmananda. For seekers of God, the conversations with Mahapurush Maharaj, Swami Shivananda. And many other books of the conversations and reminiscences of the direct disciples, the Holy Mother, and so on. And recently, in recent years, so many new books have come out. New translations, including many books by Swami Chaitananda and other Swamis. So we have ample literature. There are also other books. Someone may find inspiration in reading the Dhammapada, or the practice of the presence of God, or the imitation of Christ. Whatever you find inspiring and uplifting, that would be classified as inspiring reading. So, you know, we often read in such books situations where these people, these holy people, have encountered problems in their lives, problems with other people, doubts, the joys and sorrows, and the conflicts and challenges in everyday life. And when we read about how they faced those problems and what practices they did to uplift their minds, we think, well, I can do that. It gives us some sort of stimulus, an impetus. You know, in Vedanta we read and we hear a lot about the need for swadhyaya, scriptural study. Sometimes it's translated as self-study. Who am I? The search for the Atman within. This is not the same. Swadhyaya is not the same as inspirational reading. This type of reading or study, swadhyaya, requires a great deal of focused attention. It requires participating regularly in classes and lectures, discussions, questions and answers, one-pointed self-study and memorization. You know, for a busy person, it's not always possible to undertake this type of study. We can't rush through scriptural study. It takes time. Our teachers often recommend inspirational reading, especially in the early morning hours and before we retire in the evening, whether a person's busy or not, as opposed to grinding through, say, Shankara's Pasha on the Brahma Sutras or Vidyaranya's Panchadashi. I mean, if you're trying to fall asleep, that may be helpful, but it won't be that inspiring on the whole. You know, inspirational reading fills our minds with practical spiritual ideas and how to put them to practice in our lives. Just read the life, for example, of Holy Mother. It's just amazing what she went through, her patience, her forbearance. And she lived with so many different troublesome people. Her life is very inspiring. So as Swamiji says, just to remind us that in practical Vedanta, the ideas have to be related, incorporated, integrated into our lives. If they remain as concepts, it's not very helpful in transforming our lives. Now there's another aspect of inspirational reading. It opens another dimension of our being. You know, everything's not achieved through reading in the books. It opens up something else. We get something else from inspirational reading. And if we make this type of reading a daily habit, even for a short period, we will see slowly over time the effect it has on our lives. The incidents in the lives of these great spiritual masters and their teachings for living a spiritual life, their instructions and reassurances, and most of all, their own personal examples in their own lives, it serves as a reminder of why we have taken up spiritual life and practice in the first place. Inspirational reading provides us with a compass or a map for our spiritual lives. It's not difficult to do. It does not require concentrated attention. It refreshes, it soothes us. The more we read, the more we will wish to read. So the ideas that we are exposed to through this type of reading are very helpful in the next practice, reflection. And perhaps one of the most important gains is that it gives us self-confidence to move forward in our spiritual life. Now the next practice is reflection, or manana. In Sanskrit, man means to think. So reflection, you can think of it as contemplation or deep thinking, brooding. It's different from meditation. We often read about the practices in Vedanta of Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. So we have to hear about the truth from an Aptavakya, someone who's experienced the truth from the scriptures. We should reflect on it, we should meditate on it. But here, this morning, we're only considering the second one, reflection. When we reflect on the incidents in a saint's life, or on spiritual reality, such as infinity, luminosity, immortality, or on the qualities of reality, such as being one without a second, timelessness, blissfulness, a state beyond joy and sorrow. What happens when we reflect is we allow our minds to roam, to hover around a number of related ideas, a theme, we can say. So we are not trying to focus on just one idea or hold our minds to just a single form or quality. The mind roams freely in this spiritual realm. For example, you know, Swamiji wrote a beautiful hymn on Sri Ramakrishna Kandana, and there he describes Sri Ramakrishna as Yoga Sahaya. Sri Ramakrishna is our companion. He's our helper in the practice of yoga. It's such a beautiful idea. And then if we think on Holy Mother, her unconditional love, her mercy, her total inability to see the faults in others, her forgiveness, or Swamiji's fearlessness, his strength. Whatever it may be, the mind moves freely, ruminating on these ideas, on the form of the person, on the rupa. For example, in Swami Vivekananda's meditations on Holy Mother, he has a wonderful picture of the Holy Mother, of her form. He describes her sitting there, how she's dressed in white, and her hair is like this, and her hands are like this, and she has bangles on her arms. Her eyes are full of mercy. She's bestowing boon and blessings on her devotees. Or maybe we'll think about the qualities of the person, the guna. And again, Swami Ramakrishna has written a beautiful hymn on Swami Vivekananda, and he describes him as the prince among renunciates. He's full of vairagya, etc. Or we may think about the lila, the divine play of these great personalities. So the point is, the mind is given free rein during reflection. To me, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna is a wonderful example of this type of reflection. M's contemplation on Sri Ramakrishna. Now, when you read the Gospel, M has given such a beautiful description of the surroundings, of the gardens, of the Ganga flowing nearby, of the devotees, and of course of Sri Ramakrishna and his teachings. It's very poetical, it's very lively. It's not just a dry narrative. In fact, you feel like you're actually present there. So reflection calms the mind, and it gradually focuses our attention on the divine. If we earnestly practice and persist, it will lead to meditation. And meditation, as we know, requires a long, consistent, concentrated practice. We need to develop a conducive environment within for meditation practice. It takes time to calm our minds when we are living a hectic, busy lives. The other advantage of contemplation is that it strengthens our conviction about our spiritual life, to understand why we are practicing what we are practicing. You know, we have to have some firm, legitimate convictions, and that comes through thinking. We have to think about it. And we can contemplate or reflect on these ideas whenever we have a little time, between tasks, when we're walking the dog, when we're riding the bus to work, during our lunch break, while we are performing some daily task that does not require our undivided attention. There are so many times during the day that our minds are on autopilot, or they're simply idle. And instead of constantly looking at our text messages on our phones, we can think about these higher thoughts. And again, the more we think of them, the more they will come to mind. During situations and events in our lives and our dealings with others, we will be reminded of the various teachings and truths of our spiritual masters. And finally, the third practice is karma yoga. Well, what could be a better practice for a busy person who is working all the time? Why not make our karma a yoga? Again, karma yoga is mostly a matter of dealing with our minds. It's our attitude toward our work that matters, not what work we are actually doing. So we don't have to make any change in our activities, but we do have to pay attention to how we're thinking about them. When we try to make our karma a yoga, obviously we need to change our mental attitude. How we change our attitude to some extent will depend upon our temperament. But the salient point is we have to spiritualize what we are doing. And how do we do that? By changing how we think about ourselves and how we think about the work. You know, our teachers always say, we don't start from the outside and then bring it in. We have to think of ourselves as divine, then we can see the divine in another person. We cannot see the divine outside in someone else if we do not see the divine in ourselves. So we have to change how we think about ourselves and about what we're doing. By changing how we do think about ourselves and our work, we begin to realize perhaps work is not the problem. We often think it's an obstacle, but that's not actually the case. Sri Krishna tells us in the Gita that no one can remain without work even for a single moment. And we know that for a fact. The whole universe is in a constant state of motion. Our minds are always in a state of intense activity. So to say we're going to make our mind blank, we're going to make our mind still, it's not possible. This is the nature of the mind. We have to transcend it. We can't fix it in its current state. So we can't escape work. So let's do it thoughtfully and with a spiritual motive. Now, when we attempt to practice karma yoga, the main issue is to try to be unselfish. I feel that's the most important element. The more unselfish we are, the greater amount of work we can accomplish. Swami Vivekananda says, what is karma yoga? And his answer is the knowledge of the secret of work. Well, what is that secret? Work incessantly, but give up all attachment to work. Well, that makes sense, because that's what we're talking about, a person that's busy. So we can go on working intensely, but this is the secret. Give up the attachment to work. Don't identify yourself with anything. Keep the mind free. Well, that's not so easy. We basically identify with whatever we do. That's our natural tendency, and then we get stuck. So to let go of all of our personal investments is not that simple. So it's our false identification with this little personality and this big ego that's the stumbling block. So this I and mine, which is a rather threadbare expression, but this I and mine causes the whole misery. Swamiji says with the sense of possession comes selfishness. And of course, selfishness contracts us and makes us miserable. So everything or every act where there's selfishness or the thought of selfishness makes us attached to something. So therefore, in a nutshell, Karma Yoga tells us, fine, enjoy the beauty, enjoy the whole universe, but don't identify yourself with anything. That's the problem. We can't change the universe. We can't change other people. Don't identify yourself. Hold yourself separate. So, focusing on the work and doing it as efficiently as we can, and with as much concentration as possible, this builds our character, strengthens our will. You know, Swamiji told his disciple, Sarachandra Chakravarti, by performing disinterested work over and over again, even unwillingly, Swamiji says, we gradually find our will merging in it. And how do we perform disinterested work? It sounds so cold. We have to try to be detached, that's the point. The whole Bhagavad Gita's teachings centers around detachment. And if we are so inclined, we can offer the fruits of our actions to the Lord or to the self within. As Sri Krishna says in the Gita, no one, not even a fool, will do any action without the expectation of some kind of result. So whatever result comes to us, we lay that at the feet of the Lord. So surely all of this is a challenge. But since we all have to work, it's a practice that will definitely bring results over time. So these three practices, inspirational reading, manana, reflection, and karma yoga, can be part of every spiritual seeker's life, especially those who are busy. Surely, somehow or other, we should be able to fit these into our daily routine. And with such promising results that are given to us by our spiritual masters, shouldn't we at least try? Thank you.
Good morning. I'm really happy to be here. I've wanted this invitation for a really long time. Finally it came, and I grabbed it. I said, I will come if I can see your treasures. And I saw the treasures, but really, the treasures are the monastics here, the treasures Swami Chaitanandaji, and the treasures really are the devotees who come and support this place. You know, yesterday I had to follow Virajaprana. Today I have to follow Virajaprana. Damn. Seriously, you knocked that out of the ballpark and I got to follow you. Okay. So we're going to try to make this work. Shh, that was superb. Okay. She's my elder in every possible way, including wisdom. So maybe 6-8 months ago, Dr. Martin Luther King's granddaughter came to our convent for lunch. She's the goddaughter of a very close friend of ours. So she came to lunch, and it took about 1 second to realize exactly who she was, because you take one look at that young, beautiful face, it's like, you look exactly like your grandfather, but you're a pretty girl. And it was charming, smart, committed, justice-oriented, fun young lady. And we really enjoyed her company. And then we were walking it. We'd all ate out in the patio. It was a nice, warm California day. We walked back into the dining room, and then she did a double take when she looked on the wall of our dining room, because she went, oh, we have that picture in our first floor in Atlanta, which was, we have that painting that Swami Vedanta did of Swami Vivekananda going like this. She said, we have that in our dining room on the first floor at her home, first floor of our home. I said, huh, how come you have that in the first floor of your home? And she said, well, her parents, especially her mother, have been interested in studying world religions. And then her father got interested because his wife got interested. And they became, obviously, to hang that on their first floor of their nice house in Atlanta, obviously it was very important to them. And she said her mother and father very interested in world religions. And she said, the granddaughter said she was very close to her grandma, Coretta Scott King. And she said her grandmother originally been very, very kind of narrow-minded. That was basically Christianity, and that was the only way you're going to get to where you want to go. And she said with the influence of her son and her daughter-in-law and her granddaughter, her mind expanded towards the end of her life. And she saw the greatness of world religions. So it's like, my whole reaction was like, huh, Swamiji, okay, you're getting around. So let me share a few other things with you. Before the pandemic, I'd gone to Costco and I got one of those big jugs of detergent. And when I got home to go through the bill to see where to apportion it, it's like, they didn't charge me for the laundry detergent. So I went back the following week and I brought the receipt, and I said, I got the floor manager, who was even shorter than me. He was younger than my grandson would have been to me. And I said, excuse me, but I was here last week and I got some laundry detergent. You didn't charge me, so I'd like to buy it now. And he said, no, we can't do that. And I said, but we have it, and we would like to pay for it now. And he said, no, we can't do that. But thank you for letting me know. I will change the inventory. And I said, but please, can't we do that? And he just kind of got me on the shoulder here, kind of like you do a little old lady. And he said, no, that's okay. It's your good karma. And I went, oh, Swamiji. This young Hispanic kid is telling me about my good karma. And I just smiled and said, thank you. During the pandemic, I was working in our garden, and Enrique, our genius gardener, grounds person, everything, we were working together. He was doing the digging and the trenching, and I was doing the clipping and cutting back. And Enrique says to me, "I do not want to be reborn." I went, "What?" And he said, "I do not want to be reborn. There's so much suffering in this world." I said, "Enrique, there's a lot of suffering and there's a lot of joy." And he said, No, I do not want to be reborn." I said, "Enrique, remember, you're Catholic. You're Catholic. We know, we've been to the kids' baptisms, we've been to their confirmations, we've been to all your functions. Remember, you're Catholic." He said, Yeah, but I don't want to be reborn." I said, "Enrique, if you have desire, you'll have to be reborn." He went, "Oh." And all this makes me think, something's going on here. Something is absolutely going on, because this country has changed so dramatically within 1 or 2 generations. And all this, none of this, the guy at Costco would not have a clue who Swami Vivekananda is. Enrique might be familiar with the name, but just the general outlook in America has changed so much just since the time that I've been on the planet. And none of this would have happened had it not been for 1893 and Swamiji walking onto that stage. And that's why I'm calling it the United States of Swami Vivekananda. Because you know what? He's got us. He's got us by the back of the neck, and he's going to do what he wants. So the nation's view on religion has really dramatically changed considering the time, in a really very short time. When Swamiji came to this country was almost 100% Christian, self-identifying itself as pretty much a Protestant Christian country. There were a handful of Protestants, yeah. I'm sorry, there were Catholics, there were Jews, but basically it identified as a Protestant country, and that's why the Parliament was held to kind of show how great Protestant Christianity was, and if anyone had any sense, that's what they would come to, not all these fools over there. In a short amount of time, that has really dramatically changed. Now, the whole nation's ideas on what is acceptable as a religion and what religions believe and what their own religion is has changed so dramatically. It would not have been possible without the effect of Swami Vivekananda. Now, what's interesting is Josephine McLeod predicted this over a century ago. She wrote to Nivedita. Nivedita wrote a letter to Josephine McLeod which said, "You see, when we who understood Swamiji and who remember him are dead, there will come a long period of obscurity and silence for the work that he did. It will seem to have been forgotten until suddenly, in 150 or 200 years, it will be found to have transformed the West." And we are so privileged to be able to watch that happen in our own lifetimes, right here and now, in this crazy country, right here and now. Welcome to the United States of Swami Vivekananda, because this is unfolding right before our eyes right now. Swamiji is probably the most significant person to have changed the course of American thought, with being, as well as being, the least known and least appreciated. But he'd be the last person to object to that. That would be perfectly fine with him. When he was in the United States, one of his brother disciples wrote him and said that people were criticizing him for coming to America, crossing the Black Ocean. And he was also told that people in India were taking credit for the work that he did. And he was completely indifferent to that. He said, "It is the will of the Lord that the people of this land, America, have had their power of introspection aroused. And does it lie in the power of anybody to check the Lord's progress? I want no name. I want to be a voice without a form." That's exactly what has happened. He wanted, he got it. But it's through his influence that ideas in this country have dramatically changed, through the influence of Swamiji without his name ever being known. Swamiji said, "As the gentle falling of dew at night brings support to all vegetable life, so slowly and imperceptibly, this divine philosophy has been spread to the world for the good of mankind. It's exactly what's happening. When Swamiji came here again, it was almost 100% Christian. But how much has changed since the time that Swamiji set foot in this country? Swamiji said, all that I am, all that the world itself someday will be, is owing to my master, Sri Ramakrishna, who incarnated and experienced and taught this wonderful unity which underlies everything, having discovered it alike in Hinduism, in Islam, and in Christianity. Swamiji came here to bring that message that all religions preach the same truths, that they are expressed in different ways, through different ideas, through different metaphors and different languages, but they're all beautiful and they're all necessary. And even if one religion were to drop out, our world would be the poorer for it. Every religion is necessary, every single one. Today, the great majority of Americans believe the same thing. Even evangelical white Protestants believe, 72% of which believe that many religions can lead to eternal life. 72%. Now, considering there's absolutely nothing in biblical texts, in the canon of any of the church fathers, anywhere, that supports these ideas, this is absolutely amazing, because there's nothing in Christian doctrine or teachings that would even give credence to this. Nothing. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. Thank you, Swamiji. You did your work. Swamiji came to this country to teach the divinity of the soul and the unity of all existence. He came to tell us that we're already perfect, we're already free, and we are already eternal. Now, these ideas ring like truth to Americans because it's what this nation was founded on. He founded the Vedanta societies to keep these ideas alive, because he knew that without an organization, these ideas would just kind of fritter away without the energy to keep it going. Now, y'all are here, y'all know the Vedanta societies. We're kind of a boring bourgeois group of people. We're real quiet, we don't sing and dance too much. We just have a lot of potlucks if we're lucky. But our influence is big, and much bigger than we ourselves even understand. The historian Carl Jackson said, few other religious bodies of such Lilliputian size, truly, we're not a mega church, right? We don't qualify as mega. He said, have equaled the movement's impact or historical significance. American historian Carl Jackson. So we Vedantas say, so there, fine. We're small, but we're mighty. Be proud of it. We have great influence here. In 1896, Swamiji's book, Raja Yoga, was published, and it had an enormous effect on American society and in European society, but America in particular. According to Elizabeth de Michaelis, who is a professor at Cambridge University, she said this book was the first fully fledged formulation of modern yoga to be presented to the Western world. It had an enormous impact. Now, today when a book is published, it's no big deal, especially because of self-publishing. The world is awash with too many books. Many books published today, in fact, probably the majority, end up in the shredder because they can't find a home, they need the space, it goes into the shredder. Too many books being published. Then it was a very, very different situation. Books were prized. Publishing a book was extremely labor intensive. Every letter had to be printed individually. It was a lot of work. The paper had to be done exactly. Everything had to be sewn correctly. And these books, when they were received, were loved, they were cherished, and they were read. They were read. Not like today where people get things to put on the bookshelf. People didn't listen. People didn't go on their YouTubes. People didn't watch something. They read. They took in the ideas, and they They talked to each other about it. Libraries were loved and used. And people went to libraries to study and to read and to gain knowledge because that was what people did then. They didn't awash themselves with crazy stuff on television or YouTube. They learned. They gained in their mind. So when people read Raja Yoga, that made a great effect in people's homes. It got into people's homes. It got into libraries. It was quoted, Raja Yoga was quoted at length by William James, who was a very important person in America at the time. It was a seminal book both for psychology, which was just in its infancy, and religious studies, which hadn't even really formed then. And Raja Yoga is quoted at length. The book made a deep impact on Tolstoy in Russia. And that started a whole movement with mysticism in Russia. Now, our big cultural domino today is that Raja Yoga came into the hands of George Harrison of the Beatles. She Loves You, yeah, Beatles. George Harrison. Now, Ravi Shankar's brother gave that book to George Harrison. And George Harrison was deeply impressed by that book. He quotes, and George Harrison said, he said, by having money, we found that money wasn't the answer. And then he quotes here Raja Yoga. He said, he read in Raja Yoga, if there is a God, we must see him. If there is a soul, we must perceive it. Otherwise, it is better not to believe. It is better to be an outspoken atheist than a hypocrite. And George Harrison said, at last I found someone who made sense, and I wanted to go deeper into it. Now, when the Beatles got into Hinduism, they took a whole generation of young people with them, including yours truly, including Jeff Long, and including a lot of people who are now old, but it's like if the Beatles did it, wow, it must be groovy. So we all got into the Hindu tradition. So thank you, George Harrison, who was deeply influenced by Raja Yoga, which had been printed a century before, or more than a century. But those ideas had legs. They kept on moving. They had power in them. And Swamiji knew that from the minute he walked onto American soil. Now that's just one example. Another one, Joseph Campbell, who was deeply influenced by Mr. Joseph Campbell, who of course, as you know, was president of the New York Vedanta Society, deeply influenced by the Upanishads, by the ideas of Sri Ramakrishna. And who was influenced by Joseph Campbell but George Lucas of Star Wars fame? Now, who do you think Yoda is? Stita Pragyasa Kabasha Samadhikasha Keshava. No anger, no hatred, no. The whole thing is built in the idea of the Bhagavad Gita, of what a person of enlightenment, how that person should behave. How should a warrior behave? How does a person react with love, but with detachment? You never hurt with anger or with hate. That is going against the force. George Lucas got all these ideas into American society without ever knowing where they came from. Another way that Swamiji got into American ideas. So Swami Vivekananda spoke such a long time ago, but what's important is that the message stuck. And these ideas are still working today. Because right from the top, Swamiji said, you are divinities on earth, your souls immortal, blessed and eternal. And he spoke to us about our innate freedom and our innate perfection. And I think what got to really got to Americans with Swamiji, you talked about yesterday, was about his talk about freedom. Now, you know, Americans haven't changed all that much, because Alex de Tocqueville talks about it when he came to this country in the 1800s. He said how much we love freedom. Well, talk to American about freedom and you're giving your cat catnip. We love freedom. There's nothing that gets Americans like the whole idea of freedom. We can't bear it if we feel that, something's being taken away from our freedom. Now, Swamiji talked about freedom from the bonds of imperfection, freedom from death, and freedom from misery. Now, who wouldn't want that? Now, Americans, usually when they talk about freedom, it's like, get out of my way. I'm an American. I'm a free person. The Marlboro man on the horse, I'm going to do what I want because I'm free and I'm an American. I'm proud to be American because that means I'm free, which means get out of my way, which is just the ego writ large. It's just a big bloated ego that means I'm more important than you are. But for Swamiji, it was like freedom from imperfection, freedom from those things that stop us from knowing who we really are. Those things which stop us from making us, the Spirit's free, blessed, and eternal. That's who we are. Not that big bloated ego that keeps getting in our way, that keeps giving us misery. It's that. It's that beauty of the soul deep within us. So, freedom from limitations is what we all want. And that's what Swamiji was talking to us about. So when he tells us that we're spirits free, blessed, and eternal, it's like, yeah, but you know what? How come it doesn't always feel that way? Sometimes when I wake in the morning, it's just not exactly what I'm feeling that particular moment. But that's due to our ignorance of our own divinity. And Swamiji taught us how we can find that which is within us already. It's because we don't see our real nature. So we see difference. We see all this nonsense. We think that you and I are different, that which is within me is different within you. And that causes all our misery, the seeing of difference. It gives us personal grief. It gives us national grief, social grief, and world grief. What causes all the misery today? This idea of separation rather than unity. And Swamiji said, no, there's no separation, unity. When we don't see that divinity within ourselves, as Virajaprana pointed out, if we can't see it within ourselves, we can't see it within others also. If we can't imagine it in our hearts, if we don't feel it within our hearts, we won't be able to see it in others also. And that's when that big bloated ego comes to surface. And when we feel that sense of separation from others, we feel great grief. We truly feel real misery then. Why? Because it goes against the truth of our existence. It's like petting a cat backwards. It's like, no. Because it goes against who we really are. When we are loving, when we're kind, when we're generous, when we feel, when the unselfishness rules our life, that's when we have the greatest joy. It's Christmas is coming up. What do you want? Do you want to get a lot of stuff or do you want to give? Any adult wants to just give. That joy of unselfishness, and that's what Swamiji taught us, unselfishness. So when we reorient our ideas of who we really are, then we'll see the world in an entirely different way. The truth is we're all in this together. We got to work on this together. And when we work on ourselves, then we'll work with each other too. Another extraordinary thing about Swamiji was his relationship and his ideas and his vision of what women were, which was such a great relief in this country. Swamiji had an amazingly intelligent and strong mother, and he said all of his good qualities came from her. So years and years of denying the existence of the Divine Mother Kali, Swamiji came to believe and have the experience of her very fervently from his own direct experience. He told Nivedita, how I used to hate Kali and all her ways, but I had to accept her at last. Ramakrishna dedicated me to her, and now I believe that she guides me in every little thing I do. She does with me what she wills. 2 years before Swamiji died at the age of 39, Swamiji went on pilgrimage to Kashmir with a few of his Western disciples, and he went off alone to a temple where he did worship there for 7 days. The temple was old and dilapidated and just desecrated, filled with droppings from birds. And by the 7th day, he was oppressed by the idea that this temple had been torn down and nobody there had fought to keep that temple from being desecrated. And he said the idea just oppressed him. And he said, oh, then when this idea would just overtake, thinking that if I would have been here, I would have died to save Mother's temple. And then he heard the Divine Mother's voice very clearly saying to him, it was according to my desire that the Muslims destroyed my temple. It is my desire that I should live in a dilapidated temple. Otherwise, can I not immediately build a 7-story temple built out of gold? What can you do? Shall I protect you, or shall you protect me? Well, that changed his ideas. So Swamiji said, since hearing that divine voice, I have no more plans. The idea of building monasteries and all that, I've given up. As Mother wills, so it shall be. Swamiji was also a great devotee of Sri Sardadevi, whom he literally saw as the Divine Mother herself. He wrote to one of his brother disciples, you have not yet understood the wonderful significance of Mother. None of you, but gradually you will know. Without Shakti, there is no regeneration for this world. So when Swamiji came to America, he wasn't about to encourage the weak little me and big, strong little you, big, strong you, that had been encouraged in American society, that women were supposed to act weak so that the big man could feel strong. He wasn't about to put up with that. So his American disciples, Sister Christine and Mary Funky, were walking with him at Thousand Island Park. Well, it's a very wild area, especially then. Lots of very steep paths and brooks to cross over. And Christine and Mary Funky were walking with him. And Sister Christine was getting increasingly annoyed that he wasn't helping them out. And of course, Swamiji could read their minds. So Swamiji turned to her and said, if you were old or weak or helpless, of course I should help you. But you are quite able to jump across this brook as well as I can. Why should I help you? Because you are a woman? That is chivalry. And don't you see that chivalry is only sex? Christina said that they gave her a whole new idea of what true reverence for woman really was. Not making them weak. She said that he had unbounded faith in the power and greatness latent in all women. She said he believed that every woman is a part of the Divine Mother, an embodiment of Shakti. So we should never, no matter what gender, we should never delude ourselves into thinking that we're weak or helpless or at the mercy of forces outside of ourselves. Nobody. Our real nature is divine, and we have infinite strength within us if we only access it. Swamiji again and again preached strength. He said the best guide in life is strength, in religion as in all other matters. Do nothing that weakens you. Have nothing to do with it. So Swamiji's message to us today, because he's as absolutely as relevant to us as he was 150 years ago, what would he say? Well, he'd say, the only thing infinite about us is that which is within us, as Virajaprana said so well, which means the divine is within the hearts of all beings, and to recognize that. So his message again is that of strength, not knocking people out of our way, but standing on the strength of the divine within ourselves. That remembering always who we really are, with our innate divinity and that innate nobility of who we really are as manifestations of divinity. Second, his message is that of freedom. Not to do it when we want to do it, but the freedom to be free of our own limitations. So the third one, as she again pointed out, is unselfishness. Unselfishness gives us immense pain, and it makes us lesser than we are. We become ruled by the bloated ego rather than the divine within ourselves. Swamiji said, unselfishness is religion. Why? Because when we are unselfish, the ego has to go down, and then our better qualities can come to the fore. With unselfishness, everything good within us can come out. Swamiji said, truth, purity, and unselfishness. Wherever these are present, there is no power below or above the sun to crush one who has it. He said, with these, one individual is able to face the whole universe in opposition. You know, sometimes we feel that we are out there on a limb without support from anybody, with no help, no one to guide us, no one to encourage us. And it can be a very frightening feeling. But we can do it if our hearts are pure, if our motives are unselfish, and if we have truth on our side. Swamiji tells us that. And the last one is face the brute. Everybody has her or his own brute to face. We can't think, oh, tra-la-la, that little guy's going to go away and I'm going to be happy and I don't have to deal with it. That brute will get bigger. Whatever that brute may be, we have to turn around and face it so that we can experience the strength of who we are. That until we face it, we will always be fearful. And you can't be fearful and experience the divinity of our own nature with the strength itself. A fearful person is a miserable person. So whatever our brutes may be, face it and you'll find that that brute is a big meow, kitty, kitty, kitty. We make it much bigger than it is because of our fear. When we turn around and face it, give me some crunchies. It will become small. Running away only weakens us. Finally, meditation. Swamiji emphasized meditate. Without meditation, we won't have the ability to turn within and find that nobility within our soul. All his teachings are as relevant today as they were when he first came to this country. So I encourage you all, read and reread and reread his words. They continue to inspire us. They continue to give us strength. And as we reread it for the first, second, fifth, 10th, 20th time, we find new light, we find new meaning. He continues to guide us in this United States of Vivekananda. He said not long before he died, it may be that I shall find it good to get outside my body, to cast it off like a disused garment, but I shall not cease to work. I shall inspire people everywhere until the world shall know that it is one with God. Thank you.
You have heard two beautiful, enlightening lectures. We are grateful to our two learned nuns who presented their topics to us this morning. When Vrajaprana was talking about Swamiji, a few thoughts came to my mind. Swamiji, on the 19th September 1893, raised a paper on Hinduism at the Parliament of Religions. He mentioned about sin. You see, as she said, this country is predominantly Christians, and the doctrine of original sin is in their blood. But Swamiji says, it is a sin to call a man sinner. It is a standing libel on human nature. Swamiji attacked this papavad, sin. You are the children of immortal bliss. That is the way Swamiji addressed the American people. He said, I love the Yankees. Do you know why? this country is a new nation. They love something new. Swamiji says, I have no interest in the Europe. Oh, they're holding that old ideas. Here, as she says, that freedom. Here people love. There are many, many free thinkers are in this country. They do not care for religion, this and that. Vedanta is very inspiring for them. I remember about one January, went to Minneapolis to dig out some of the things about Swamiji in their local newspaper. And while Swamiji was in the train, a man was telling him, "Hi, where are you from?" Well, I am from India. I don't know that country. I have never read geography. Tell me, where is that country? Oh, it is just the other side of the globe. Oh, then you are a heathen. Oh, all right, here people call me a heathen, that's correct, that is true. But you will go to hell. But then that connection, Swamiji told another, I think a minister, he said, you are a heathen, you will go to hell. Swamiji said, then where are you going? Well, I will go to heaven. Then Swamiji said, definitely I shall go to hell, because I don't like to live with you. Swamiji was so funny, interesting. Anyhow, that man was telling then when the train, he was talking, well, you know, I am a Presbyterian. Swamiji said, that's fine. Then he said, you know, my sister believes in reincarnation. Nowadays in America, I think more than 60% people in reincarnation. Anyhow, well, I believe in reincarnation. My sister believes in reincarnation. Swamiji was talking to this person. Another thing, one lecture of Swamiji I liked, I read many times, is Vedanta, the future religion of the world. It is he gave that lecture in San Francisco. Here Swamiji made a point. If you want to form any kind of religion, you need three things: a personal God, a prophet, and a book. Without these three, you cannot form any kind of religion. Personal God, God. Prophet, Jesus. Book, Bible. Without Bible, without Jesus, without God, there is no Christianity. Same thing. Without Allah, without Muhammad, without Quran, there is no Islam. Same thing. Without Buddha, without Tripitaka, there is no Buddhism. But Vedanta is a very interesting religion. Vedantic God is not personal God. It is Satchidananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, absolute. It is not personal. It is impersonal. Impersonal means universal. Second, there is no one prophet in Hinduism. Many prophets, many avatars. It is not guided by one. Third, Vedanta is not guided by one book. We have thousands of scriptures. The way Swamiji presented this Vedanta to the Western world, which is amazing. And another thing Swamiji was thinking before leaving this country, he was thinking, I shall put some seed in this country. He was talking about Vedanta in America. I shall put some seeds in this country. Those seeds will sprout, will be planted, will tree and bring fruits. What are those seeds? Swamiji's 4 yogas. If you read those 4 books, you will understand what is called true religion. Nobody will be able to cheat you. You exactly know what religion is. Most people are confused about religion. Anyhow, it was a very great spiritual feast that our 2 sisters spoke to us this morning. Now we shall arrange here, you can ask them some questions and they will be glad to talk to you. And Vrajaprana is connected with many communities, she knows many informations, ask her. Both are very good writers and good speakers, very well read, I tell you. Thank you very much.